Art Carney was the kind of man who could light up a living room with just one line. The kind of actor who made you forget you were watching a performance at all. As Ed Norton on The Honeymooners, he became the working man's jester. The goofy sidekick, the neighbor you wished would pop in through your fire escape window every night. But behind the laughter and the rickety apartment set that made television history was a friendship and then a rift that would haunt him for the rest of his life. They called each other brilliant and gentle. They toasted each other at rap parties. They shared secrets on set that never made it into the scripts. And yet, when she died decades later, Art Carney's silence thundered louder than any eulogy ever could. It wasn't always this way. Back in the 50s, when TV was still a flickering novelty, and nobody thought people would gather around a box to watch a plumber in a ratty hat crack jokes with a bus driver, Art Carney and his co-star, the woman everyone would come to know as Mrs. Creighton, were inseparable. She was sharp as a tack, just 5'2", but with a presence that could freeze Jackie Gleason in mid-rant. Offstage, she was kinder than her nonsense TV persona let on. She'd bake cookies for the crew, slip cigarettes into Carney's coat pocket when they ran late into the night, and when Jackie Gleason's legendary ego boiled over, and it often did, they'd sneak out the back door of the studio to share a cheap diner meal and belly laughs at 2 in the morning. But fame is an acid that eats through even the thickest bonds. When the Honeymooners hit big, the three of them, Gleon, Carney, and her, were suddenly everywhere. TV guide covers, cross-country tours, Hollywood banquets that made Carney, who always preferred a quiet whiskey at home, squirm under the bright lights. Money came pouring in, but so did the pressure. Gleason wanted bigger laughs, faster rewrites, more control. The set turned tense, the long hours grinding everyone raw. And somewhere between the shouting matches and the half-hearted apologies, the unspoken lines between co-stars started to blur. Rumors have always swirled the whispered stories that they were more than just castmates. That late-night script meetings in her dressing room lasted long after the pages were marked up and set aside. That the laughter backstage sometimes covered up tears and slammed doors and desperate pleas to keep things secret. They were never proven, never confirmed, but they stuck. And when the show ended, when the final "and away we go" was shouted for the last time, Art Carney packed up his props and his hush-hush regrets and walked away. She reached out in the months after a few polite calls, a sweet holiday card, a note about a possible reunion special. He never answered. He won Emmys, 6 in total. He beat Al Pacino for an Oscar for Harry and Tonto. He climbed to the mountaintop of acting. And yet, in every green room, every press junket, every after-party toast, people asked about the Honeymooners. They asked if he missed her, if they'd worked together again. He just smiled that crooked grin, mumbled something about different lives now, and changed the subject. To his family, he'd say there was nothing to say. But late at night, when the bourbon burned warm in his belly and the memories crept in uninvited, he'd sit on the edge of his bed, staring at a dusty photo tucked in a sock drawer. The two of them laughing behind a cardboard cutout of the Creighton's kitchen window. Hollywood people would see her at parties sometimes, all grace and dignity, pretending she didn't still hope for one last phone call. In her memoir, she called him brilliant and gentle. She said he was the kind of man who made a rainy Tuesday feel like Christmas morning. She wrote about the day she knew it was over a late shoot. Carney already half out the studio door. Gleon barking orders while the cameras cooled off. She caught Art's arm, asked if they'd talk tomorrow, maybe grab a drink. He kissed her on the cheek, whispered someday, and never spoke to her again. Decades passed. Carney grew older, stooped from years of carrying other people's laughter on his back. He turned down reunion shows, refused offers to write tell-all books that could have lined his pockets with easy money. He guarded the truth so fiercely that it rotted inside him. When she fell ill in the 90s, her family tried to reach him. They thought maybe he'd want to say goodbye. They thought maybe he'd want to unbury whatever words he'd swallowed for 40 years. He never returned the calls. When the news came that she died, a quiet, graceful passing, surrounded by family, no cameras, no bright lights, he just sat in his chair, eyes glassy, that old photo face down on the table. Hollywood paid tribute. Of course, Jackie Gleason's family sent a spray of lilies so big it dwarfed the tiny headstone. Cast members gave teary interviews, sharing anecdotes about the good old days, about how she'd kept everyone sane when rage flared. But Art Carney said nothing. Not a statement, not a whisper, not even a polite quote in the trades. Reporters camped outside his house, hoping he'd break the silence. He just drew the curtains and turned up the old records they used to play between takes, big band songs, and the occasional Sinatra tune that always made her sigh and say, "You know, this is the kind of music that makes life feel worth it." His wife asked him once near the end why he'd let it all rot away, why he'd never picked up the phone, never offered the closure that might have brought them both some peace. He just stared out the window, tapping a trembling finger against the glass like he was counting raindrops. "Some wounds," he said, "aren't meant to heal. Some secrets are bigger than forgiveness. And maybe, just maybe, loving someone means letting the memory stay pure, even if it means tearing yourself apart to keep it untouched. When Art Carney died in 2003, they found that photo, the one from the Honeymooners set, still tucked away. Corners worn soft, his own handwriting on the back to the only person who ever really saw me. No one knows if he ever wrote her letters, he never mailed, if he dreamed of what they'd say to each other in some perfect world where fame didn't eat. Friendship's alive. All they know is that the man who made the world laugh until their ribs hurt carried a silence deeper than any punchline could ever fill. And maybe that's the real story. Not that Art Carney refused to speak to her again, but that he couldn't. Because to speak, it would be to admit what was lost, what could never be fixed. What fame cost to people who should have spent a lifetime laughing through the walls of a dingy Brooklyn apartment that never really existed. Subscribe to Hollywood Untold for more emotional stories behind music legends and the feuds that shaped rock history. Tap the bell to never miss a